We open this series on great thinkers with a bang. Before we start the video, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all the new content. Today we look at Sigmund Freud, 1856-1939, the sage of the subconscious. You know him as the founder of psychoanalysis. You may even know some of his concepts like the Oedipus complex or dream interpretation. But did you know that he wrote almost 100 books and hundreds of articles? It's easy to get lost in the Freudian forest, so we will try to help you find your way. Born in Freiburg, Moravia, now Pribor, Czech Republic, Sigmund Freud was 6 years old when his family moved to Vienna, where he would live most of his life. He had 5 siblings, of which he was the oldest boy, and from an early age he exhibited leadership qualities. When he was 4 years old, for example, he organized a strike among the children in his apartment building. His father was a well-to-do businessman and his mother came from a wealthy family, so Sigmund was not short of money. He got his early education at home and it was mainly his mother who taught him. At first his parents intended to send him to university, but they changed their minds and wanted him to study medicine instead. In any case, Sigmund eventually studied both philosophy and medicine at the University of Vienna. After graduating in 1881, he worked for some time as a neurologist, specializing in the areas of hypnosis and hysteria. In his youth, Freud was very sociable and made many friends. One of them was a woman named Martha Bernays, whom he married in 1886. They had 6 children together, 3 boys and 3 girls. Like his father, Freud became a wealthy man. He was a sought-after neurologist whose practice brought him a considerable income. In addition, his wife's family lent him money from time to time. However, despite having enough money, Freud spent most of his time working. He was a prolific writer, publishing more than 100 books and hundreds of articles during his lifetime. A lot of his writing dealt with hypnosis, but soon his interest shifted to psychoanalysis, a term coined by Wilhelm Wundt that literally means analysis of the mind. While Wundt used the expression to describe introspection, Freud gave it a different meaning. Psychoanalysis is what Freud called his method of investigation, the therapy technique he developed to treat mental disorders and the body of knowledge that resulted from his investigations. To understand what Freud meant by psychoanalysis, let's look at the state of psychology in the late 19th century. At that time, psychology was still a new science, and it was mostly concerned with normal, healthy people. Abnormal psychology was considered a branch of medicine. The prevailing medical model viewed mental illness as a disease caused by a physical disorder in the brain. For example, dementia was seen as a form of general paralysis, and depression was seen as a type of melancholia. Furthermore, psychologists believed that there were no unconscious mental processes and that the mind could be studied only by observing outward behavior. Finally, sexuality played no role in psychological theories. If psychologists mentioned sex at all, they referred to it only in terms of reproduction. Now, Freud was the first to challenge each of these assumptions. The major turning point in Freud's thinking occurred after he met Jean-Martin Charcot and Joseph Breuer, 2 French neurologists, in Paris in the 1880s. Charcot was one of the first to seriously study hysteria, which had been somewhat of a joke among physicians until then. According to Charcot, hysteria was caused by a physical disorder in the nervous system. Breuer, on the other hand, treated hysterical women with hypnosis. He noticed that after a session, their symptoms disappeared. Freud was impressed by the results and began to apply hypnosis to his patients. This is how he met Anna O, a young woman suffering from hysteria. Her symptoms included paralysis, sensory disturbances, and convulsions. Anna O had recently lost her mother, and she kept having flashbacks to the day her mother died. Through hypnosis, Freud helped her talk about the incident, and in doing so, she recovered from her illness. Freud was excited because he realized that talking about traumatic experiences could cure mental disorders. However, Anna O relapsed as soon as the treatment ended. He therefore concluded that to achieve success, the patient needs to gain insight into the unconscious meaning of the symptoms. Unlike Breuer, who hypnotized his patients, Freud never used hypnosis in his treatment. Instead, he encouraged the patient to freely associate and interpret the thoughts that came to mind. This process of free association aimed at bringing the repressed material into consciousness. In 1895, Freud published a paper entitled Studies on Hysteria, in which he presented the case of Anna O and introduced the concept of the unconscious. He defined the unconscious as a part of the psyche that influences conscious thoughts, feelings, and behavior. It was hidden from direct awareness, yet accessible through indirect means such as slips of the tongue. Freud also introduced the concept of repression in this paper. It is the primary defense mechanism by which unacceptable impulses from the unconscious are kept out of consciousness. Together, these three ideas, unconscious, repression, and free association, formed the cornerstone of psychoanalysis. Soon he applied the same method to a wide range of mental disorders and eventually to normal people. Over time, his ideas grew increasingly abstract and speculative. Psychoanalysis turned into a comprehensive theory of human nature. According to Freud, the human psyche consists of three parts: the id, ego, and superego. The id is the primitive part of the psyche. It operates according to the pleasure principle, which means that it seeks immediate gratification of instinctive drives regardless of consequences. The superego develops as the person internalizes rules and values from parents and society. It operates according to the morality principle, striving for perfection. The superego judges our actions and can cause us to feel guilt and shame if we violate its standards. The ego develops in order to mediate between the unrealistic demands of the ID and the harsh constraints of the superego. It does so by using defense mechanisms. The ego operates according to the reality principle, finding socially acceptable ways to satisfy the ID's desires. The ego uses a variety of strategies to defend itself against the anxiety that arises from the conflicts between the ID and the superego. These include repression, denial, rationalization, reaction formation, projection, displacement, and so on. Dreams, jokes, and the neuroses are the result of these conflicts. Freud's second important contribution was his theory of psychosexual development. He proposed that we pass through a series of stages during childhood, each characterized by a specific erogenous zone. At the oral stage, the mouth is the focus of pleasure. Babies are driven by the instinct of self-preservation, and they seek to satisfy their needs by sucking, swallowing, and biting. The anal stage comes when toddlers are between 18 months and 3 years old. The anus becomes the main source of pleasure. During this stage, the child's pleasure comes from expelling and retaining feces. Freud associated anal eroticism with the adult's fascination with cleanliness and order. The phallic stage occurs when the child is around 6 years old. The genitals become the erogenous zone. Children experience sexual urges towards the opposite parent and rivalry with the same-sex parent. The Oedipus complex is part of this stage. At the latency stage, sexual urges are suppressed and the child focuses on acquiring social skills and knowledge. The genital stage begins at puberty and lasts throughout adulthood. People develop sexual urges towards others and the focus of pleasure shifts from the genitals to the whole body. Freud claimed that if parents do not adequately resolve the Oedipus complex during the phallic stage, their children will have difficulties forming intimate relationships later on. Besides dreams and psychosexual development, Freud also studied many other topics, including the psychology of everyday life, such as slips of the tongue, forgetting names, misplacing objects, etc. He interpreted these phenomena as expressions of the unconscious. Parapraxes, as they are called, reveal the disguised meanings that underlie our everyday behavior. Freud also recognized the importance of early childhood experiences. Unlike his contemporaries, he did not believe that adult psychology was fully determined by genetics or environmental influences. Rather, he argued that early experiences, especially those in the first 6 years of life, shape our personality. Now, the idea that early childhood experiences have an impact on our later development is today widely accepted. However, Freud's views on psychosexual development are no longer taken seriously. All of Freud's work was highly controversial. Some of his disciples, such as Alfred Adler and Carl Jung, eventually alienated with him. Adler broke away in 1911 after a quarrel over the interpretation of dreams. Jung left the circle in 1912, criticizing the concept of the collective unconscious. Later, revisionist historians branded Freud a megalomaniac and his theories unscientific drivel. Nevertheless, few can deny the originality and profundity of Freud's thinking. He was the first to realize that mental disorders are caused by psychological factors rather than biological ones. He was also the first to systematically investigate the role of sexuality in human psychology. We owe Freud much of our understanding of what motivates people and how they behave. He was a prolific writer who sometimes produced up to 4 manuscripts a week. His style of writing was unique. He coined many words and neologisms, but that did not make him obscure. Rather, his texts are full of wit and vivid imagery. Our favorite Freud quote, "Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar." If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button. Help us develop the channel.